My family spent the entire dinner laughing at my single status, treating my life like some pathetic punchline. They had no idea they were mocking the only person financially keeping them afloat. They also didn't know that my purse was empty of cash tonight. Instead, I had brought receipts. By the time dessert arrived, the laughter had died in their throats. Finally, the joke was not on me. My name is Lillian Watson. I am 34 years old, and I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, to the outside world. I am a compliance officer at a financial services firm. I am the woman who wears navy blue blazers, drinks her coffee black, and never misses a deadline. I am boring. I am predictable. I am the safety net. But my family does not see me as a person. To them, I am simply the wall that stands between them and the consequences of their own poor decisions. Every Sunday, I drive 40 minutes to the suburbs to eat dinner with my parents. It is a tradition that feels less like a family gathering and more like a hostage negotiation. The air in their dining room is always thick, smelling of pot roast and unspoken resentments. Last night was no different, except for the humidity. The air conditioning was broken again. Another bill I knew would eventually slide across the table toward me before the night was over. My sister, Brielle, arrived 20 minutes late. She is 29 years old, but she operates with the chaotic energy of a teenager who has just stolen her mother's credit card. She breezed through the front door carrying a designer handbag that I knew cost more than my first car. She smelled like expensive vanilla perfume and desperation. "Sorry I'm late," she announced, not looking sorry at all. She kissed Mom on the cheek, ignored Dad, and sat directly across from me. She didn't ask how I was. She never does. Instead, she pulled out her phone, snapped a picture of the food, and posted it to her story with a caption about family blessings. We ate in silence for a few minutes. The only sound was the scraping of silverware against china. Then, Brielle decided she was bored. She looked at me, her eyes scanning my face, my plain blouse, and finally, my bare left hand resting on the table. "So, Lillian," she said, her voice loud enough to cut through the humidity. "Still nothing? No dates? No prospects?" I kept cutting my meat. "I have been busy with work." "Brielle," she laughed, a sharp, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. "Work, work, work. That is all you do. Look at you. You are drying up. Where's the husband? Where are the kids? Oh, right. You don't have any—" I looked up. I expected my parents to reprimand her. I expected my mother to say, "Be nice to your sister," or my father to grunt for silence. Instead, I saw my mother cover her mouth to hide a giggle. My father shook his head, a smirk playing on his lips, as if Brielle had just told a charming joke. "She has a point, Lillian," my mother said, spooning more potatoes onto her plate. "You are not getting any younger. A career won't hold your hand when you are old." They were laughing. They were actually laughing at me. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It wasn't an explosion. It was the quiet, metallic click of a lock sliding into place. I looked at Brielle, who was beaming with the satisfaction of a well-landed jab. I looked at my parents, who were enjoying the show. I put my fork down. I folded my napkin and placed it next to my plate. I kept my voice perfectly level, the same tone I use when I explain federal regulations to senior management. "That is a fair question, Brielle," I said. "Now, let me ask you one. Where is your money?" The smile vanished from Brielle's face. "What?" "You asked where my husband is. I am asking where your money is. The rent money you begged for last month? The car insurance payment from January? The $3,000 you needed for that emergency that you never explained?" I turned my head to look at my parents. And the mortgage payment I covered in December? The medical bills for Dad's bad back that somehow cost exactly the same amount as a weekend trip to Vegas? The room went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. "Excuse me?" my father said, his voice dropping into that deep, command tone he used to scare me with when I was 6. I didn't flinch. "You heard me. You all think it is funny that I'm single. You think my life is empty because I don't have a ring. But my life isn't empty. It is just expensive. Because I am paying for yours. I stood up. I picked up my purse. The modest leather one that I have had for 5 years. From today, I am stopping. No more transfers. No more covering the overdrafts. The bank is closed. My mother's face crumpled instantly. She switched tactics faster than a politician. Lillian, how can you be so cruel? We are family. We sacrificed everything to raise you. And I have paid you back, I said. With interest. You are being dramatic, Brielle spat, tears instantly welling up in her eyes. It was a performance I had seen 1,000 times. I am just going through a hard time. You know the influencer market is tough right now. You are supposed to be my sister. Sit down, Lillian, my father ordered. He pointed a finger at the empty chair. You do not speak to your mother like that. You do not walk out on this family. You know your place. I do know my place, I said, slinging my purse over my shoulder. My place has been the ATM, and I am tired of the transaction fees. I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I closed it firmly behind me, leaving them in the stunned silence of the dining room. I marched to my car, my hands shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally saying the words out loud. I got into the driver's seat and locked the doors. For a moment, I just sat there in the dark driveway. I felt numb. I expected to feel liberated, but instead, I felt cold. It is a terrible thing to realize that the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally actually have a very specific condition for their love: the balance of your checking account. As I backed out of the driveway, my headlights swept across the front of the house. Through the bay window, I could see them. They weren't eating. My mother was gesturing wildly. Brielle had her face buried in her hands, but it was my father who caught my eye. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't comforting my mother. He was standing a little apart from them, staring intently at his phone. He typed something, waited, and then looked at the screen again. He looked nervous, expectant, like he was waiting for a confirmation code. I didn't know what he was doing, and for the first time in 10 years, I told myself it wasn't my problem to solve. I shifted the car into drive and pulled away, leaving the house, the debt, and the laughter behind me. But as I drove toward the highway, I couldn't shake the image of my father's face in the glow of his phone screen. He didn't look like a man who was upset about an argument. He looked like a man who was waiting for a wire transfer to clear. My apartment in Uptown Charlotte is exactly 650 square feet. It is a study in minimalism, not by design, but by necessity. My furniture is functional: a gray sofa, a glass coffee table, and a bookshelf organized by color. There are no throw pillows. There are no superfluous decorations. I wake up every morning at 5:30. I drink exactly 2 cups of black coffee. I go to the gym in the basement of my building and run on the treadmill for 45 minutes. I run until my lungs burn and my legs feel like lead. I do not do this because I enjoy fitness. I do it because physical exhaustion is the only thing that quiets the noise in my head. I work as a senior compliance and risk officer at Apex Financial Solutions. It is a sterile name for a sterile job. I spend my days ensuring that other people follow the rules. I audit trails. I flag suspicious activities. I tell powerful men that they cannot do what they want to do because the regulations say otherwise. I am good at it. I am disciplined, meticulous, and invisible. My boss, a man named Mr. Henderson, likes me because I never ask for extensions and I never make mistakes. He thinks I'm a workaholic. He does not know that I work late because the overtime pay is the only way I can cover the unexpected expenses that seem to plague my family every 3rd week of the month. I make a good salary. By all standard metrics, I should be comfortable. I should have a diversified portfolio and a retirement plan that is fully funded. Instead, I live paycheck to paycheck. I am not poor. But I am hollowed out. Every time my savings account hits $5,000, the phone rings. It is like they have a radar, a sixth sense for my solvency. The water heater at their house breaks. Brielle needs a deposit for a new apartment because she fought with her roommate. Mom needs dental work that is somehow considered cosmetic by insurance but life-threatening by her dramatic retelling. I sat at my kitchen table, the silence of the apartment pressing in on me. I opened my laptop. The screen was the only source of light in the room. I logged into my bank account. The numbers stared back at me, black and white, unemotional. My mind drifted back to 3 years ago. I had an offer from a tech startup in Austin. It was a director-level position. The base salary was 40% higher than what I was making now. I remember holding the offer letter, feeling the weight of the paper, feeling the possibility of a different life, a life where I could buy a house with a yard, a life where I didn't have to check my balance before buying groceries. I turned it down. I turned it down because Dad had just accidentally let his life insurance lapse, and Mom was diagnosed with hypertension, and they needed me close. They needed my stability. They needed to know that if the floor fell out, I would be there to catch them. I stayed in Charlotte. I stayed in the smaller job. I stayed in the trap. Then there was Mark. I closed my eyes, forcing the memory away, but it came back anyway. Mark was an architect. He was kind. He was the only man who ever looked at me and didn't see a utility. He saw a woman. We dated for 11 months. He wanted to get serious. He wanted to combine finances and buy a townhouse in Dilworth. I remember the night we broke up. We were sitting in his living room, and he had a spreadsheet open on his iPad. He asked me about my debt-to-income ratio. He asked me why I was transferring $1,500 a month to an account he didn't recognize. I couldn't tell him. I couldn't tell this man, who came from a family that paid for his college and gave him a down payment for a graduation gift, that I was paying the mortgage on a house I didn't own. I couldn't tell him that my sister's credit card debt was essentially my credit card debt. I was ashamed. The shame was a hot, heavy stone in my gut. So I told him I wasn't ready. I told him I needed space. I broke his heart to save my pride, and to protect the secret of my family's parasitism. I opened a new tab on my browser. I pulled up the transaction history for the last 5 years. I exported the data into a spreadsheet. The risk manager in me took over. I was no longer a daughter. I was an auditor. I started categorizing the expenses. Category A, essential living expenses, rent, utilities, food. Category B, the black hole. I sorted by Category B. The list was endless. Transfer to Mom, $400. Transfer to Brielle, $250. Venmo to Dad Repair, $600. Payment to Fast Cash Lenders, $300. It wasn't just the big amounts. It was the frequency. It was the relentless, dripping faucet of their needs. I summed the column for the last 12 months alone, $28,450. I stared at the number, $28,000. That was a car. That was a down payment. That was a year of freedom. That was the price of their love. I felt a cold rage settling in my chest. It wasn't the fiery anger I had felt at dinner. This was something different. This was the cold, hard resolve of a person who realizes they have been scammed. I had been treating my family like a charity case, but they were treating me like a venture capital firm that didn't require a return on investment. I took out a notepad. I wrote, "No more Plan B" at the top. I started typing. I didn't just stop the transfers. I went into the bill pay section of my bank's website. I found the entry for the electric company at my parents' house. Delete. I found the entry for their internet provider. Delete. I found the recurring transfer to Brielle's account, labeled gas money. Delete. Then, I went further. I logged into my company's payroll portal. I initiated a change of direct deposit. I opened a new checking account at a completely different bank, a regional credit union that had no branches near the suburbs. I routed 100% of my paycheck to the new account. I changed my Netflix password. I changed my Amazon Prime password. I went into the family sharing settings on my phone and removed everyone. It felt petty. It felt small. But as I clicked confirm on each removal, I felt the chains loosening. I was physically shaking. My hands trembled over the keyboard, not from fear, but from the sheer physiological shock of doing something for myself. I was cutting the umbilical cord that had been wrapped around my neck. I looked at the clock. It was 11:45 at night. I had to work in the morning. I had to put on my blazer and go to Apex Financial Solutions and pretend that I wasn't dismantling my entire personal life. My phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up the dark kitchen. I knew who it was before I looked. I picked it up. A text message from Mom. "Lillian, you cannot be this selfish. We are family. You know Brielle is struggling right now. Your father is worried sick. Family needs you." I read the words twice. Selfish. For 34 years. Selfish was the weapon they used to keep me in line. If I wanted a toy, I was selfish. If I wanted to go to a summer camp, I was selfish. If I wanted to keep the money I earned, I was selfish. I looked at the cursor blinking in the text box. My thumb hovered over the letters. I could apologize. I could send $500 just to smooth things over, just to make the anxiety go away. It would be so easy. It would be the path of least resistance. I thought about the spreadsheet. I thought about the $28,000. I thought about Mark. I turned the phone off. I didn't put it on silent. I powered it down completely. I placed it on the counter, face down. The room was silent again. I walked to the window and looked out at the lights of Charlotte. For the first time in my life, the view didn't look like a cage. It looked like a city. And for the first time in a long time, I was just Lillian, not a daughter, not a sister, not a savior, just Lillian. And that would have to be enough. When I turned my phone back on at 6 o'clock the next morning, the device nearly vibrated off the nightstand. It wasn't a few missed notifications. It was an assault. The screen lit up with a chaotic stream of bubbles, missed calls, and voicemails that had accumulated during my 6 hours of silence. It felt less like a family trying to reach me and more like a coordinated military strike designed to break down a fortification. I sat on the edge of my bed, coffee in hand, and began the grim task of cataloging the damage. The messages came in 3 distinct waves, each with its own signature flavor of manipulation. First, there was my mother. Her texts were soft, weaponized martyrdom. They started around 11 at night. "Lillian, I cannot sleep. My chest hurts. I am just lying here thinking about when you were a baby. You were so sick with colic, and I stayed up for 3 nights straight holding you. I never complained. We are a family. Families forgive. Please do not let money ruin the bond we built." She didn't mention the money directly. She never did. She wrapped the demand for cash in the heavy, suffocating blanket of maternal sacrifice. The implication was clear. I owed her my financial stability because she had performed the basic duties of a parent. Then came my father. His messages were sparse, blunt, and arrived early in the morning, right before I woke up. "Pick up the phone. Stop this nonsense. You are embarrassing yourself. You need to remember who put a roof over your head. I expect you at the house on Tuesday to discuss the budget." He didn't ask. He commanded. In his mind, I wasn't a 34-year-old compliance officer. I was a subordinate who had stepped out of line and needed a performance review. And finally, Brielle. Her thread was a manic roller coaster of emotions that gave me whiplash just reading it. 1 in the morning. "You are seriously going to let me get evicted? I thought you were my sister." 1:15 in the morning. "Fine, be a bitch. Mom is crying because of you." 2 in the morning. "Please, Lil. I promise I will pay you back this time. I have a brand deal coming through next week. Just cover the rent for this month." 4 in the morning. "You know why you are like this? It is because you are bitter. You are jealous that I actually have a life and you just have a spreadsheet. Enjoy dying alone." I didn't reply to a single one. Instead, I did something I had done 1,000 times at work but never in my personal life. I opened my laptop, created a new folder on my encrypted hard drive, and named it Evidence. I took screenshots of every text. I downloaded every voicemail. I saved the emails. I organized them by sender and date stamp. It was a reflex born from years of risk management. When a client starts acting erratic, you document the communication. You build a paper trail. I didn't know why I felt the need to do it with my own parents, but a cold instinct in my gut told me that these weren't just angry messages. They were data points. Around 7 in the evening, after a full day of staring at compliance reports, my phone rang again. It was a FaceTime request from Mom/Dad. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the red decline button. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. I wanted to see them. I wanted to see if the reality of my cutoff had actually sunk in, or if they were still operating under the delusion that this was just a temper tantrum. I accepted the call but kept my face neutral. The screen filled with the image of their living room. My mother was holding the phone, the angle unflattering, showing the worry lines etched deep into her forehead. My father was sitting in his recliner in the background, arms crossed. Brielle was there too, perched on the arm of the sofa, scrolling on her own phone, pretending to be disinterested. "Oh, thank God," my mother breathed out, her eyes wet. "Lillian, you look tired. Are you eating enough?" "I am fine, Mom," I said. "Why are you calling?" "We are calling because we are worried about your mental state," my father said from the background. He didn't look at the camera. He looked at the television. "You blew up at dinner. That is not like you. We think you are under too much stress at work." "I am not stressed," I said calmly. "I am broke. Or rather, I was broke until yesterday." Brielle looked up, a smirk playing on her lips. "See? She is so dramatic. Broke. You make 6 figures. Lillian, stop acting like you are on welfare. It is insulting to people who actually struggle. My struggle is paying for your struggle." "Brielle," I shot back. My mother made a tisking sound. Now, let's not start again. Lillian, we just want to make sure you are okay. We know you did not mean what you said about cutting us off. It was just the heat of the moment." They weren't listening. I looked at their faces on the small screen. There was no fear of losing me. There was no fear of damaging our relationship. They looked annoyed. They looked like customers waiting for a manager to override a declined credit card. They were treating my boundary like a technical glitch that just needed a reboot. "I meant every word," I said, leaning closer to my camera. "The transfers are canceled. The bills are in your name. Figure it out." My father finally looked at the phone. His eyes were hard. "We are your parents. Lillian, you do not dictate terms to us. We have handled things for this family for 40 years. Then handle this," I said. My mother let out a sob, clearly staged for effect. "I don't know who you are anymore. You used to be so sweet, so helpful. Now you are just cold." "I am not cold. Mom, I am empty." Then, my father said something that made the hair on my arms stand up. He turned slightly to my mother, his voice dropping, thinking I couldn't hear him clearly over the digital connection. "Stop begging her, Martha. It is fine. We already took care of that other matter today. Just let her cool off. She will come back when she realizes she has no one else." The phrase replayed in my head like a siren. I froze. "What matter?" I asked. "What did you take care of?" My father looked back at the screen, his expression shifting into a mask of indifference. "Nothing you need to worry about since you are so busy with your own life. Just family business, since you're not part of the family finances anymore. It does not concern you." Brielle giggled. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound. "Yeah, Lil, don't worry about it. Go back to your spreadsheets." They ended the call. The screen went black, leaving me staring at my own reflection. My heart was hammering against my ribs. We took care of that matter. What matter? They had no money. I knew their accounts better than they did. They had 0 liquidity. They had maxed out 2 credit cards. Brielle had no income. How could they take care of anything without my injection of funds? Unless they found a new source. But who? No bank would lend to them with their credit scores. No other relative had money to spare. I looked at the clock. It was 8:30 at night. I walked to my desk and woke up my laptop. I didn't go to social media. I didn't go to my email. I went to the credit monitoring service I subscribed to. It was a professional habit. I checked my report every month, usually on the 1st. Today was the 12th. I logged in. The dashboard loaded. Displaying my score, it was excellent. 810. A number I had guarded with my life. I clicked on the Activity tab. Usually, it was empty. But tonight, there was a yellow flag. Status, alert, type, hard inquiry. Date, February 11th. Institution, pending update. My breath hitched. A hard inquiry meant someone was applying for credit, not checking it, applying, and it was dated yesterday, the day after the dinner. I clicked for more details, but the system was slow. It just said, pending update, new account inquiry. I sat back in my chair, the room suddenly feeling very cold. My father's words echoed in my head. We took care of that matter. They hadn't found a new source. They hadn't found a donor. They had found a proxy. I looked at the evidence folder on my desktop. I had thought I was gathering proof of emotional manipulation. I thought I was documenting a family feud. But as I stared at that yellow alert on the screen, I realized I was wrong. I wasn't just a daughter who had been used for money. I was a walking bank account to them. And even though I had cut the cord, they had found a way to plug themselves back in. I wasn't dealing with bad parents anymore. I was dealing with identity thieves. And the blow that was coming wasn't going to be a guilt trip. It was going to be a legal nightmare. 3 days after the dinner, a thick white envelope arrived in my mailbox. It sat there innocuously between a flyer for a pizza place and a coupon for dry cleaning. The return address was for a company called Liberty Capital Solutions, a lender I had never heard of, let alone done business with. It looked like a standard marketing solicitation, the kind that usually promises low interest rates and freedom from debt. But as I held it in my hand, I felt a strange weight to it. It wasn't flimsy like junk mail. It was rigid. It contained a packet. I carried it upstairs to my apartment, my heart rate already climbing. I placed it on my kitchen island and reached for a letter opener. The sound of the paper tearing seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet room. I slid the contents out. It was not a solicitation. It was a welcome packet. Dear Lillian Watson, congratulations on the approval of your personal consolidation loan. Enclosed, please find your copy of the executed agreement and the disbursement schedule. I felt the blood drain from my face. I grabbed the edge of the counter to steady myself. I had not applied for a loan. I had not authorized a disbursement. I flipped the page, my eyes scanning rapidly for the numbers. $45,000. The loan amount was $45,000, with an interest rate of 12%. The term was 60 months, and there, at the bottom of the second page, was the smoking gun. It was a signature. It read, Lillian Watson. I stared at it, my breath catching in my throat. It was good. To a stranger. It would look authentic. The slant was right. The way the L looped was almost perfect. But it was wrong. The T in Watson was crossed with a sharp, aggressive slash, whereas I always cross mine with a flat, level line, and the pressure was too heavy. I write with a light hand. This signature had been carved into the paper by someone pressing down hard, someone trying too hard to be convincing. I knew that hand. I had seen it sign permission slips for school trips. I had seen it sign checks for birthday money. It was my mother's hand, guiding the pen. But the intent behind it was entirely the work of my father. I read further. The loan was unsecured, but the stated purpose listed on the application was home improvement, primary residence. The address listed for the residence wasn't my apartment. It was their house in the suburbs. They had used my credit, my name, and my financial standing to secure $45,000 to fix a house I didn't own, likely to pay off the debts they had accrued while pretending to be wealthy. I looked at the date next to the forged signature, February 10th. They had signed this the morning after I walked out. This wasn't just desperation. This was a tactical strike. I had cut off the supply, so they had simply bypassed the supplier and raided the warehouse. They didn't even wait 24 hours. While I was at work, agonizing over whether I had been too harsh, they were sitting at a bank desk or in front of a computer, impersonating me, stealing from my future to pay for their present. My phone buzzed. I jumped, nearly knocking over my water glass. It was a text from my father. "It is just a temporary solution. The roof needed work and the contractor wouldn't wait. We will pay the monthly installments. Don't stress about it. We are handling it." I stared at the screen. There was no apology. There was no shame. He wasn't confessing to a crime. He was informing me of an administrative decision he had made on my behalf. He truly believed he had the right. He believed that my credit score was a family asset, like a communal car or a shared Netflix password. "Don't stress," he said, as if identity theft was a minor inconvenience like a rain delay at a baseball game. Panic tried to claw its way up my throat. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive over there and scream until the windows shattered. But then, the training kicked in. The compliance officer in me took over. I took a deep breath, held it for 4 seconds, and exhaled. "Do not react," I told myself. "Respond." I walked to my desk. I turned on my scanner. I did not reply to my father. I placed the loan agreement on the glass flatbed. I scanned every page at high resolution. I saved the file as fraudulent_loan_liberty capital_feb11.pdf. Then I took out my phone and photographed the physical documents, ensuring the timestamps were visible. I took a screenshot of my father's text message. I saved that too. I opened a new physical file folder. I labeled it Case 001. I put the original envelope and the documents inside. I was no longer a daughter dealing with a difficult dad. I was an investigator building a case file. I picked up my phone and dialed the number on the back of the welcome packet. "Thank you for calling Liberty Capital Solutions," a cheerful automated voice said. "For new accounts, press 1. I pressed 1. "This is Sarah," a woman answered. "How can I help you today?" "My name is Lillian Watson," I said. My voice was steady, cold, and devoid of emotion. "I received a welcome packet today for a loan of $45,000. I am calling to inform you that I did not apply for this loan. I did not sign these documents. This is a case of identity theft." There was a pause on the other end. The cheerful tone vanished, replaced by a guarded professional one. "I see. Ms. Watson, can you verify your social security number?" "I can," I said. "But first, I need you to flag this account for fraud immediately. I want the disbursement stopped." "I see here the funds were wired yesterday," Sarah said. "They have already cleared." My stomach dropped. They had the money. It was gone. "Okay," I said. Then we moved to the next step. "I am initiating a fraud claim. I need the transaction ID for the wire transfer, and I need a copy of the application that was submitted." "Ms. Watson," Sarah asked gently, "do you have any idea who might have had access to your personal information? Often in these cases, it is a family member or a roommate." The question hung in the air. This was the precipice. If I said yes, if I named them, I wasn't just disputing a charge. I was accusing them of a felony. I was crossing a line that could never be uncrossed. I looked at the text message from my father again. Just a temporary solution. He hadn't asked. He had taken. He had looked at me, his daughter, and seen a resource to be harvested. "Yes," I said clearly. "I have reason to believe the perpetrators had access to my personal documents. I am required to tell you," Sarah said, "that for us to proceed with a full fraud investigation and to remove this liability from your name, you will likely need to file a police report. We will need a case number." "I understand," I said. "And Ms. Watson," she added, "given the amount, we strongly recommend you seek legal counsel." "I will," I said. "Thank you." I hung up. The room was silent, but the air felt charged, electric with the magnitude of what had just happened. They hadn't just been greedy. They had broken the law. They had committed wire fraud and forgery. They had gambled my entire life, my career in finance, my reputation, my clean record, on the bet that I would be too weak to turn them in. They banked on my silence. They banked on the fact that I was the good daughter who always fixed things. I walked into the bathroom. I turned on the cold water and splashed my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. There were dark circles under my eyes. But there was something else in my expression that hadn't been there before. The softness was gone. The hesitation was gone. I wiped my face with a towel. I looked my reflection in the eye. They think family is a shield, I whispered to the empty room. They think family is the excuse they can use to ruin my life. I set the towel down on the rack. Well, I said, my voice hardening into steel, if family is the excuse to ruin my life, then today I will ruin that excuse. The next morning, I did not go to work with red eyes. I went to work with a fortress mentality. The moment I sat down at my desk, before I even opened my first compliance report, I initiated a total lockdown of my digital existence. I contacted all 3 major credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, and placed a security freeze on my files. It was a simple click of a mouse, but it felt like I was pulling up the drawbridge to a castle that had been under siege for a decade. I spent the lunch hour systematically severing every digital tendril that connected me to my family. I changed the passwords to my email, my social media, and my cloud storage. I enabled 2-factor authentication on everything, linking it to an authenticator app rather than my phone number, just in case they tried to SIM swap me. I combed through my authorized user lists on every shopping site and service. I removed Brielle from my Uber account. I removed my mother from my streaming services. I removed my father from the family data plan. Then came the money. I walked into a branch of a competitor bank during my break and opened a new high-yield savings account. I transferred my entire emergency fund, $12,000, out of the institution my family banked with. Watching the balance hit zero in the old account and reappear in the new one was visceral. It felt like taking a deep breath after being held underwater. For the first time, my money was not our money, it was just mine. In the evenings, I stopped going straight home to brood. I joined a boxing gym in South End. It was a gritty, sweat-smelling place that had nothing in common with the sterile Pilates studios Brielle frequented. I wrapped my hands, put on the gloves, and learned to throw a jab. Every time my glove connected with the heavy bag, I imagined the smirks at the dinner table. I imagined the loan application. I imagined the years of guilt trips. Thwack, that was for the selfish comment. Thwack, that was for the fake signature. Thwack, that was for the 34 years of being treated like an investment vehicle instead of a human being. I started cooking again. Real meals, grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, quinoa. I stopped eating cereal for dinner. I set a sleep schedule. In bed by 10. Up by 5. This wasn't a vanity project. I wasn't trying to get a revenge body. I was training for a war. I knew that what was coming would require every ounce of mental clarity I possessed. I needed to be sharp. I needed to be unbreakable. The change in me was palpable. At work. Mr. Henderson stopped by my desk on a Thursday afternoon. He held a risk assessment I had submitted that morning. "This is excellent work. Lillian," he said, tapping the paper. "Sharp, insightful. You caught a vulnerability in the vendor contract that 3 other analysts missed. You seem focused lately." "I am," I said, meeting his eyes. "I have eliminated some significant distractions." He nodded, satisfied. "Keep it up. We are looking at promotions next quarter." A promotion. More money. In the past, that thought would have terrified me because more money meant more demands from home. Now, it just meant more ammunition for my new life. At night, my apartment became an operations center. I printed out 5 years of bank statements. I taped them to the wall of my home office. I bought highlighters in 4 different colors. I started cross-referencing. I had the evidence folder on my laptop, but I needed to see the physical flow of cash. I highlighted every transfer I had made to my parents in yellow. I highlighted every transfer to Brielle in pink. As I stepped back and looked at the sea of yellow and pink, a pattern emerged that made my stomach turn. It was a cycle, a predictable, mathematical cycle that I had been too close to see. I pulled up Brielle's Instagram archive on my iPad. I scrolled back 3 years. June 4th, 3 years ago. Brielle posts a photo from a resort in Tulum. Living my best life. June 10th. 3 years ago. A transfer of $800 to my mother for emergency car repairs. I kept scrolling. December 2nd. 2 years ago. Brielle posts a picture of new Louboutin boots. December 8th. 2 years ago. A transfer of $1,200 to my father for unexpected medical copays. It happened again and again. Every single time Brielle made a significant luxury purchase or went on a trip, my parents would have a financial crisis within 7 days. I realized with a jolt of horror that my parents weren't just bad with money. They were laundering Brielle's lifestyle through my guilt. Brielle would spend their rent money on a bag. They wouldn't stop her. Instead, they would wait until the rent was due, panic, and call me with a sob story about a broken appliance or a health scare. I wasn't paying for emergencies. I was retroactively paying for Brielle's vacations. My sister wasn't just a spoiled brat. She was the architect of my poverty. She knew exactly which buttons to push on Mom and Dad to get them to push the buttons on me. It was a systemic extraction of wealth, with Brielle at the top of the pyramid and me at the bottom. I felt a cold calm settle over me. This was no longer just about a forged loan. This was about a 5-year conspiracy to defraud me. I sat down at my computer and opened a new document. I titled it, The Timeline. I started typing, documenting the events of the last week with forensic precision. Sunday, February 8th. The dinner, the confrontation. I verbally terminate financial support. Monday, February 9th. Brielle posts a story about new beginnings. My father sends a text about handling it. Tuesday, February 10th. A loan application is submitted to Liberty Capital Solutions in my name for $45,000. The signature is forged. Wednesday, February 11th. The funds are dispersed. My credit report shows a hard inquiry. Thursday, February 12th. The welcome packet arrives at my apartment. I printed the timeline. I clipped it to the front of the file folder containing the loan documents, the scanned texts, and the highlighted bank statements. It was thick. It was heavy. It was undeniable. I looked at the calendar on my wall. I had an appointment the next morning at 9 o'clock. I wasn't going to a therapist. I wasn't going to a mediator. I was going to the office of a man named Marcus Thorne, a specialist in consumer fraud and identity theft litigation. I packed the folder into my bag. I checked the lock on my front door. For years, I had prepared for the worst-case scenarios at work. I had modeled risk. I had predicted market crashes. But I had never predicted that the biggest threat to my existence would share my last name. I turned off the lights. I was ready. I wasn't going into that office to ask for advice on how to make peace. I wasn't going there to find a way to let them down gently. I was going there to drop the hammer. Marcus Thorne did not look like the kind of man who enjoyed family reunions. His office in downtown Charlotte was a temple of glass and steel, situated on the 32nd floor, looking down on the city like a silent judgment. I sat across from him, my hands folded in my lap, trying to stop them from trembling. On the mahogany desk between us lay the binder I had spent the last 2 nights assembling. It was open to the page with the forged signature. Thorne was a man of few words and even fewer smiles. He adjusted his rimless glasses, his eyes scanning the documents with the precision of a laser. He read the loan agreement, the text messages, and the timeline I had constructed. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the hum of the building's air filtration system. Finally, he closed the binder. He looked at me. "Ms. Watson," he said, his voice a deep, resonant baritone. "What you have here is not a family dispute. It is not a misunderstanding. This is textbook identity theft. It is grand larceny, and it is wire fraud, which is a federal crime." Hearing it said out loud by a stranger hit me harder than I expected. "They are my parents, Mr. Thorne," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "I know it looks bad, but—" "There is no but," he interrupted. He leaned forward, clasping his hands. "The law does not have a sentimental exemption for DNA. If a stranger on the street took your information and took out a loan for $45,000, Would you hesitate to call the police? No, I whispered. Of course not. Then you must not hesitate now, he said. The relationship does not change the nature of the act. In fact, it aggravates it. They used their proximity to you to bypass security questions. They used your trust as a weapon. He opened the file again and tapped the signature. Look at this. This was not a panic move. This was practiced. They didn't just scribble your name. They studied it. I looked away, feeling a wave of nausea. Here is the plan, Thorne said, shifting into tactical mode. We are going to file a fraud affidavit with the Federal Trade Commission. We are going to file a police report. And then we are going to send a formal dispute letter to Liberty Capital Solutions, attaching both of those documents. A police report, I repeated. That means they could be arrested. That means they committed a crime, Thorne corrected. Whether the district attorney chooses to prosecute is out of your hands. Your job right now is to protect your financial existence. If you do not report this, the law views it as you accepting the debt. You become an accessory to your own robbery. Is that what you want? No, I said firmly. Good. Now, I want you to memorize 3 sentences. I want you to say them to the bank, to the police, and if necessary, to a judge. I do not want you to deviate from them. He held up 3 fingers. 1. I did not authorize this transaction. 2. I did not sign this document. 3. I did not consent to the use of my identity. I did not authorize. I did not sign. I did not consent, I repeated. Again, he ordered, with conviction. I did not authorize this transaction. I did not sign this document. I did not consent to the use of my identity. Better, he said. Now, before we file the police report, which acts as the nuclear option, I advise my clients to send one final notice. It shows the court that you attempted to resolve this in good faith. You will send them a formal demand letter. You will give them 48 hours to contact the lender, admit the error, and reverse the transaction. If they do not, we proceed with the criminal filings. They won't do it, I said. They don't have the money to pay it back. That is not your problem, Thorne said. The goal isn't to get them to pay. The goal is to establish that you gave them a chance to cure the defect, and they refused. It makes your case bulletproof. I left his office an hour later with a draft of the letter in my hand. It was cold, clinical, and devoid of any daughterly affection. I went to a shipping center and sent it via overnight courier, requiring a signature upon receipt. I also emailed a copy to my father and Brielle. The subject line read, Notice of fraudulent activity. Action required. The clock started ticking. I went back to my apartment and waited. I didn't have to wait long. At 6:15 that evening, my phone rang. It was my mother. I took a deep breath. I did not authorize. I did not sign. I did not consent. I whispered to myself. I answered the phone. Lillian! Her voice was a shriek, high and hysterical. What is this letter? A lawyer? You hired a lawyer against your own father? I hired a lawyer to protect myself against fraud, I said, my voice steady. Did you read the letter, Mom? We needed that money for the house, she sobbed. We were going to pay it back. We just needed a little help. How can you be so vicious? You are trying to destroy us. You want to see your parents in jail? Is that it? You want to see us in handcuffs? I am not trying to destroy you, I said, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. I am preventing you from destroying me. There is a difference. It is just money, she screamed. We raised you. We gave you life. And you just tried to steal my life, I countered. You have 48 hours. Mom, Dad needs to call Liberty Capital and tell them the truth. If the loan isn't canceled by Friday at 5 o'clock, the police report gets filed. I am not bluffing. You are a monster, she spat out, the sobbing stopping instantly, replaced by venom. I don't know where you came from. I came from you, I said. That is the scary part. I hung up. I didn't block the number this time. I needed the call logs. 5 minutes later, a text came in from Brielle. I expected pleading. I expected excuses. What I got was pure, distilled malice. You think you are so smart with your lawyer. Go ahead and sue. It just proves why no man wants you. Who would marry a woman who sends her own dad to court? Keep going. Lillian, you will be rich, right? And you will be sitting in that ugly apartment all by yourself. At least we have each other. I stared at the screen. The old Lillian would have cried. The old Lillian would have typed out a paragraph defending herself, explaining that she was the victim. The new Lillian just took a screenshot. I dragged the image into the evidence folder. I didn't reply. Engaging with Brielle was like wrestling with a pig in mud. Eventually, you realize the pig enjoys it. I was done getting dirty. I poured myself a glass of water and stood by the window, watching the Charlotte skyline. I felt drained, hollowed out by the conflict, but I didn't feel guilty. That was the surprise. The guilt was gone, replaced by a survival instinct I hadn't known I possessed. The next morning, I had a follow-up call with Thorne to confirm the letter had been delivered. The courier confirmed delivery at 8 in the morning. I told him. They have the ultimatum. Good, Thorne said. Now, Ms. Watson, there is one more thing we need to discuss. I spent last night reviewing the document scans you sent me. Specifically, the other documents you found in your old files, the ones from 3 or 4 years ago. I frowned. I had sent him a few old contracts I had found in my filing cabinet. Things I vaguely remembered signing for my parents, co-signing a car lease for Brielle, guaranteeing a small personal loan for my dad years ago. What about them? I asked. I compared the signatures, Thorne said. His voice dropped, becoming even more serious. On the car lease from 3 years ago, and the personal loan from 4 years ago, you told me you remembered signing those, correct? I think so, I said. I mean, I remember them asking me to help. I assumed I signed them. Ms. Watson, Thorne said, and a chill went down my spine. The signatures on those old documents match the forgery on the Liberty Capital loan perfectly. They have the same heavy pressure, the same incorrect slant on the T, the same loop on the L. I stopped breathing. What are you saying? I am saying that you didn't sign those either, Thorne said. You might have agreed to help verbally, and they took that as permission to sign your name for you. Or perhaps they didn't even ask. But this forgery yesterday, it wasn't their first attempt. It was just the first time you caught them. I gripped the edge of my desk. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. They have been practicing my signature for years? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. It appears so, Thorne said. And if they have been doing it for years, Ms. Watson, we have to ask ourselves a very difficult question. What else have they signed that you don't know about? Mr. Thorne's question hung in the air long after I left his office. What else have they signed? I went home and turned my apartment into a war room. I pulled every box out of my closet, every file folder from my cabinet, and every backup hard drive I had stored since college. I became an archaeologist of my own exploitation. I was looking for fossils, for the bones of the lies they had told me over the last decade. I started with the physical papers. I found a lease renewal for my parents' Toyota Camry from 2 years ago. I remembered that car. I remembered them telling me they had handled the financing themselves, that they were finally getting back on their feet. I looked at the document. There, at the bottom of page 4, was my name, Lillian Watson. Beside it was the date, March 15th. I froze. I pulled up my work calendar on my laptop and scrolled back 2 years. March 15th. I stared at the entry. Compliance seminar. Seattle, Washington. I was 3,000 miles away on the day I supposedly signed that lease. I remembered that trip. I remembered the rain in Seattle. I remembered the terrible coffee at the conference center. I remembered calling my mother from my hotel room, and she had sounded so cheerful. She had asked me how the weather was. She never mentioned that at that exact moment. My father was sitting in a dealership in North Carolina, forging my signature to secure a vehicle I would never drive. I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. It wasn't just the loan from last week. This was systemic. I kept digging. I found a utility transfer form from 4 years ago, signed by me. I was in the hospital getting my wisdom teeth out that day, heavily sedated. I found a credit limit increase request on a joint card I thought had been closed 5 years ago, signed by me. They hadn't just used me in emergencies. They had built their entire financial infrastructure on my identity. They had treated my credit score like a communal garden, harvesting what they needed whenever they wanted, ensuring the crop never died, but never letting it grow for my own benefit either. I realized then how they had done it. It wasn't all at once. It was a slow drip of information gathering. Over the years, they had asked for things. Lillian, can you send a copy of your driver's license? The insurance company needs to verify you are not living here anymore to lower our rate. I sent it. Lillian, what is your social security number again? I need to list you as a beneficiary on my life insurance. I gave it to them. I had handed them the keys to the castle, thinking I was helping them protect me. Instead, I was helping them rob me. Then came the digital excavation. I logged into my old email account, the one I used for family correspondence. I searched for keywords, loan, credit, bank, sign. I found thousands of emails. Most were benign, but then I found one that stopped my heart. It was an email from Brielle to my father, dated 18 months ago. It was part of a long chain about planning a surprise anniversary party for Mom, which was why I was copied on it, but they had forgotten to delete the previous replies in the thread below. I scrolled down to the bottom, past the party planning, to the original message Brielle had sent. Dad, don't worry about the down payment for the timeshare. I can get Lillian's login for the tax portal. I know her security questions. As long as she still believes we are broke, we still have a way. She never checks the old statements anyway. As long as she still believes. I read it 3 times. The letters seemed to blur and then sharpen into razor blades. They knew. They knew exactly what they were doing. They discussed it. They strategized it. Brielle wasn't just a passive beneficiary. She was an active co-conspirator. They relied on my trust. They relied on the fact that I was a good daughter who wouldn't suspect her own flesh and blood of espionage. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the laptop. I felt a strange, icy calm settle over me. The kind of calm that comes when you finally understand the rules of the game you have been losing for years. I printed the email. I printed the lease with the impossible date. I printed the utility forms. I scanned them all into a single file named supplemental_evidence_002.pdf and emailed it to Marcus Thorne. Marcus, I wrote, add this to the pile. I was in Seattle when this lease was signed. I have flight records to prove it, and read the attached email thread. It proves premeditation. I hit send. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. It was my father. I stared at the screen. Dad calling. I didn't answer. I let it go to voicemail. He called again immediately, then a third time. Finally, a text message popped up. We need to talk. Not on the phone, not through lawyers, face to face. Like adults. Meet me at the coffee shop on 4th Street. Tomorrow at 10. Just you and me. Please, Lillian, for the sake of the family. I looked at the message. For the sake of the family. That phrase used to work on me. It used to be a command code that bypassed all my logic circuits. Now, it just looked like a threat. I thought about refusing. I had enough evidence to bury them. I could just let Thorne handle it. I could let the police knock on their door. But I needed to see him. I needed to look him in the eye. Not as his daughter, but as his victim. I needed to see if there was any remorse, or if he was just sorry he got caught. And frankly, I needed one more piece of evidence. I needed a confession. I typed back, 10 o'clock, the Starbucks on 4th and Tryon. I will be there. I chose that location for a reason. It was in the heart of the banking district. It was crowded, it was public, and it was 3 blocks from my office, which meant I was on my turf, not his. The next morning, I prepared for the meeting like I was preparing for a deposition. I wore my sharpest blazer. I pulled my hair back into a tight bun. I put on my sunglasses. I stopped at an electronics store on the way. I bought a small, high-fidelity digital voice recorder. I didn't trust my phone battery, and I didn't want to be fiddling with an app while he was talking. I slipped the recorder into the inside pocket of my blazer. I tested it. It picked up my whisper perfectly. I arrived at the coffee shop at 9:45. I bought a black coffee and sat at a small table in the corner. But not a secluded corner. I was visible to the baristas and the line of customers. I placed my phone on the table, face down. I clicked the recorder on in my pocket. At 10 o'clock sharp, my father walked in. He looked older than I remembered, though I had seen him just a few days ago. His shoulders were slumped. He was wearing his Sunday best shirt, the one he wore to church or to ask the bank for a loan extension. He scanned the room, looking nervous. When he saw me, he forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He walked over and sat down. He didn't get a coffee. "Lillian," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. I pulled my hand back. "Hello, Dad?" He flinched. The rejection stung him, or at least he pretended it did. He put his hands on the table and sighed, a long, ragged sound meant to evoke sympathy. "I got your letter," he said. "The one from the lawyer." "I know," I said. "You have 24 hours left on the deadline." "Lillian, you can't do this," he said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "You are talking about police reports. You are talking about criminal records. Do you have any idea what that would do to your mother? To Brielle? To my reputation in the community? Do you have any idea what $45,000 of fraudulent debt does to my reputation?" I asked. "Or the car lease you signed when I was in Seattle? Or the timeshare Brielle emailed you about?" His face went pale. "Do you know about the lease?" "I know about everything, Dad," I lied. I probably didn't know half of it yet, but I wanted him to think I was omniscient. "I have the documents. I have the dates. I have the flight records proving I wasn't there. It is over. The game is over." He stared at me, and for a moment, the mask slipped. The concerned father vanished, and I saw the man who had forged my signature. I saw the calculation. "We did it for you," he said. I almost laughed. "For me? You stole my identity for me?" "We wanted to build an inheritance," he said, his voice rising slightly, gaining a desperate edge. "We invested that money. We were going to flip that house, make a profit, and give it all back to you. We were trying to help you. Lillian, you are so risk-averse. You never take chances. We took the chances for you." "You took the chances with my credit," I corrected. "And where is the profit? Where is the inheritance? There is nothing. Dad, just debt. You spent it on appearances. You spent it on Brielle." "Brielle is delicate," he snapped. "She needs support. You are strong. You can handle the pressure. She can't." "So you sacrificed me," I said. "You fed me to the wolves to keep her warm." "It is not like that," he insisted. "Look, just drop the lawyer. Please, I will sign a promissory note. I will pay you back every cent, $50 a month, whatever I can afford. Just don't file the report. Don't make us criminals." "You are already criminals," I said softly. "The filing is just the paperwork." I looked at him. He was sweating. He was desperate. And in his desperation, he had just admitted to everything. "We did it for you. We invested that money." He had confirmed the fraud. The recorder in my pocket was capturing every syllable. "I will make you a deal," I said. He perked up, hope flooding his eyes. "Yes, anything. I won't file the police report today," I said. "Thank you. Lillian, oh, thank God. I knew you were reasonable. Wait," I held up a hand. "I won't file it today, but I am not dropping the lawyer, and I am not accepting a promissory note for $50 a month. You are going to go to Liberty Capital Solutions. You are going to confess to them. You are going to tell them it was unauthorized. You are going to take the debt into your own name, whatever the interest rate is, whatever terms they give you. You are going to clear my name officially." "They won't give me the loan," he hissed. "My credit is shot. That is why we used yours." "Then you sell the house," I said. The silence that followed was absolute. He looked at me as if I had pulled a gun. "You want us homeless?" he whispered. "I want to be free," I said. If the house is the only asset you have to pay for the crimes you committed, then yes, sell the house, sell the car, sell Brielle's designer bags. I don't care. But my name comes off that debt. I stood up. I could feel the recorder warm against my chest. You have until tomorrow at 5. Dad, fix it, or the police will fix it for you. I walked out of the coffee shop. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew he was sitting there, staring at his empty hands, finally realizing that the ATM had not only closed, but it had also called security. The following evening, I pulled into my parents' driveway for the second time in a week. The house looked exactly the same as it had on Sunday. The peeling paint on the porch, the overgrown azaleas, but the woman stepping out of the car was entirely different. Sunday, Lillian had been a daughter seeking approval. Friday, Lillian was a prosecutor seeking a verdict. I carried a heavy leather portfolio under my arm. Inside was not a gift, but a comprehensive dossier of their crimes. I walked through the front door without knocking. They were waiting for me in the dining room, arranged like a tribunal. My father sat at the head of the table, his face a mask of thunderous authority. My mother sat to his right, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, already in character as the long-suffering matriarch. Brielle sat to his left, scrolling through her phone with exaggerated boredom, as if being accused of felonies was just another tedious family obligation. The table was set for dinner, but there was no food, just empty plates and cold silence. I didn't sit down. I walked to the end of the table opposite my father and placed the portfolio on the wood. The thud it made was the only sound in the room. "You have some nerve coming here after threatening us with police," my father started, his voice booming. "After everything we have done for you." "Save the speech, Dad," I said. My voice was calm, almost conversational. It wasn't the shaky defiance of Sunday. It was the flat, effectless tone of a compliance officer reading a violation report. "I am not here to argue about feelings. I am here to discuss facts." I opened the portfolio. I took out 3 distinct stacks of paper and slid them across the table, one for each of them. "In front of you is a timeline," I said. "It details every fraudulent transaction made in my name over the last 5 years. It includes the Liberty Capital loan from last week, the Toyota lease from 2 years ago signed while I was in Seattle, the credit card applications, the utility transfers." My mother picked up a page, her hand trembling. "Lillian, why are you doing this? Why are you keeping score?" "Because you were stealing," I said. "And I have the receipts." "It wasn't stealing," my father roared, slamming his hand on the table. The silverware jumped. "It was family business. We needed liquidity. I intended to pay it back." "Intent doesn't change the statute, Dad," I replied, not flinching. "Forging a signature is a felony. Wire fraud is a felony. Conspiracy to commit identity theft is a felony. And make no mistake, this was a conspiracy." Brielle let out a sharp, derisive laugh. She tossed her hair back, looking at me with pure disdain. "Oh my God, listen to you. Conspiracy. You sound like a bad TV show. Get over yourself. Lillian, you have plenty of money. We borrowed a little bit to keep the lifestyle afloat. Big deal. You should be thanked that we let you feel useful for once." "Useful?" I looked at her. "Is that what you call it? Using my credit to buy handbags while I drive a 10-year-old Honda?" "I needed those for my brand," Brielle snapped. "You don't get it. You have zero vision. You are just a boring corporate drone. Daddy had a plan to flip the house, and I was going to help market it. We were going to make millions, but you had to go and freeze everything." "So you admit it," I said softly. "Admit what?" Brielle rolled her eyes. "That we are smarter than you?" "Yeah, I admit it. Daddy told me exactly what to do. He said, 'Lillian is too scared to leverage her assets, so we have to do it for her.' I just sent the emails. He did the heavy lifting." The room went dead silent. My father's face drained of color. He looked at Brielle with horror. "Brielle, shut up." "What?" she asked, looking around, suddenly realizing she had walked into a trap. I am just saying, it was your idea. Thank you. Brielle, I said. That is exactly what I needed to hear. My mother let out a wail, standing up and reaching across the table toward me. Lillian, stop! She didn't mean it. She is just a child. Please, don't write that down. I don't need to write it down, I said. I have the emails, remember? And I have the loan documents, and I have the recording from the coffee shop yesterday. My father froze. Did you record me? North Carolina is a one-party consent state. Dad, I said, I am allowed to record any conversation I am a part of. And yesterday, you admitted to the fraud. Today, Brielle admitted to the conspiracy. And Mom, by not stopping them, by benefiting from the money. You are an accessory. My mother collapsed back into her chair, burying her face in her hands. We are ruined. We are absolutely ruined. You were ruined a long time ago, I said. I am just the one turning on the lights so you can see the mess. I reached into the portfolio again. I pulled out a single, crisp document. It was a legal affidavit, drafted by Marcus Thorne. This is your only way out, I said. This is a sworn statement. It says that you, collectively, acknowledge that the debt with Liberty Capital and the lease on the Toyota were unauthorized by me. It accepts full liability for those debts. It legally absolves me of any responsibility. I placed a pen on top of the document. If you sign this tonight, and if you take this to the bank tomorrow morning to assume the debt, I will not file the police report. I will let the bank handle you civilly. You will lose the house. Probably. You will be in debt for a long time. But you won't be in prison. My father stared at the paper. And if I don't sign? Then at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, my lawyer files the police report, and I hand over the recording, the emails, and the timeline to the district attorney, and Brielle goes to jail for fraud. You go to jail for forgery, and Mom goes to jail for aiding and abetting. You wouldn't, Brielle whispered. Her arrogance was gone, replaced by the terrified realization that her brand wouldn't survive a mugshot. We are your blood. Grave robbers share blood too, I said. That doesn't make them family. My father looked at the paper, then at me. He looked for a crack in my armor. He looked for the little girl who used to cry when he raised his voice. He didn't find her. He found a woman who had spent 10 years managing risk, and who had finally decided to eliminate the biggest risk in her life. You are ungrateful, he spat out. We gave you everything. You gave me a bill, I corrected. And I am done paying it. I looked at my watch. You have until I walk out that door to decide. I am not staying for dessert this time. Give me the pen, my father growled. He snatched the pen. He didn't read the document. He just signed it, his hand shaking with rage. He shoved it toward my mother. She signed it through her tears. Then he slid it to Brielle. Sign it, he ordered. But Dad, sign it, he screamed, his voice cracking. Brielle signed. I picked up the document. I checked the signatures. They were real this time. I folded it and placed it securely in my bag. You will take the original copy to the bank tomorrow, I said. My lawyer will be checking. If it is not done by noon, the deal is off. I turned to leave. Lillian, my mother called out, her voice thin and broken. If you walk out that door, don't ever come back. You have no family here anymore. I stopped at the threshold. I looked back at the three of them, angry, defeated, and toxic to the core. I know, I said. I didn't come here tonight to ask for your respect, Mom, and I didn't come here to ask for your love. I came here to take back my life. I walked out into the cool night air. The door clicked shut behind me, and for the first time in 34 years, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt like freedom. The days following the signing of the affidavit were not filled with the peace I had expected. Instead, they felt like the heavy, static-charged air before a tornado touches down. I had handed the signed confession to Marcus Thorne, and he had immediately filed it with Liberty Capital Solutions and the credit bureaus. Now, the machinery of the financial system was grinding into motion. It was slow, opaque, and terrifyingly thorough. My parents, realizing that the piece of paper they signed wasn't just a magical reset button, but an admission of guilt, began to panic. The silence from the dining room showdown broke within 48 hours. First came the bargaining phase. My father sent me a series of emails, shifting from the authoritative tone he had used all my life to a strange, wheedling negotiation. "Lillian, I spoke to a friend in real estate. If we can just hold off on the bank processing the fraud claim for 30 days, I can sell the house privately. We can pay off the loan without the bank investigating. Please, withdraw the claim. Let us handle this in-house." I forwarded every email to Thorne without replying. There was no in-house anymore. They had burned the house down. Then came the emotional threats from my mother. She left voicemails that swung wildly between sobbing and cold fury. "You are going to kill your father with this stress. His blood pressure is through the roof. If he has a stroke, it is on your hands. Lillian, do you hear me? You are choosing money over your father's life." I listened to the messages once, saved them to the hard drive, and deleted them from my phone. I had learned in therapy, the expensive kind I was finally paying for instead of paying their bills, that this was not my burden. His blood pressure was a result of his crimes, not my boundaries, but it was Brielle who launched the dirty war. On Tuesday, I received a notification from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in 3 years, then an aunt, then a neighbor from my childhood street. "I heard you cut your parents off. I didn't know you were so heartless. Your sister says you are trying to evict them. After all they did for you?" Brielle had taken the narrative to social media and the extended family network. She didn't post publicly where I could sue her for libel. She worked in the shadows, sending direct messages and making tearful phone calls. She painted a picture of a wealthy, cold-hearted corporate sister abandoning her aging, struggling parents, and her entrepreneurial sister just because of a misunderstanding about paperwork. I wanted to scream. I wanted to post the timeline, the bank statements, and the recording of her admitting to the conspiracy. I wanted to burn her reputation to the ground. But Marcus Thorne had given me strict instructions. Do not engage. Do not defend. The truth is in the legal filing. Everything else is noise. So I stayed silent. I let them think I was the villain. I knew that when the legal hammer dropped, their stories would fall apart like wet paper. Then, the twist arrived on a rainy Thursday evening. My phone rang. It was an unknown number with a local area code. Usually, I ignore these, assuming it is a telemarketer, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Is this Lillian Watson?" A woman's voice, young, hesitant. "Yes, who is this?" "You don't know me, but I used to be roommates with Brielle. About 2 years ago. My name is Chloe." I stiffened. "I remember Brielle had a roommate she had a falling out with. Did she tell you to call me?" "No," Chloe said, her voice hardening. "She doesn't know I'm calling. I saw her post on Facebook about how you're bullying the family. It made me sick." I waited. "Why did it make you sick, Chloe?" "Because she used to brag about it. Lillian." The air left my lungs. "What do you mean?" "We would be out for drinks, and she would put everything on a card. I asked her how she afforded it since she wasn't working. She laughed and said, 'Oh, that is the Lillian Scholarship.' She told me she had your social security number memorized. She said you were so desperate for Dad's approval that you would never check the statements as long as they told you they were proud of you once in a while." I gripped the phone so tight my hand cramped. It wasn't just a hunch anymore. It was confirmed. It wasn't desperation. It was predation. "She called me a mark," I whispered. "She called you a golden goose," Chloe corrected. She said, "My sister is smart with books but dumb with people. Look, I have old texts where she talks about using your info to get a store credit card. I don't know if that helps." "It helps," I said, my voice shaking. "It helps more than you know. Can you send them to me?" Already screenshotted. Sending them now. 5 minutes later, I had the screenshots. There it was, in black and white text bubbles from 2 years ago. Lillian won't notice. She's too busy working to pay for it anyway. I forwarded them to Thorne with a note. Proof of malice. The case was no longer just solid, it was concrete. While my personal life was a war zone, my professional life was suddenly flourishing. Freed from the mental load of managing my family's crises and the financial drain of their emergencies, I was performing at a level I hadn't touched in years. Mr. Henderson called me into his office on Friday. Lillian, the board reviewed your risk assessment on the merger project. They were impressed. They want you to lead the integration team for the new acquisition. It comes with a 20% raise and a significant bonus structure. I sat there, stunned. A year ago, I would have calculated that bonus in terms of how much debt it could clear for my father. Now, I calculated it in terms of freedom. It meant I could buy a house of my own. It meant I could travel. It meant I was safe. I accept, I said. Good, Henderson smiled. You seem lighter, Lillian. Whatever you changed in your routine, keep doing it. I just cut out some dead weight, I said. That evening, the final invitation arrived. It wasn't a text or a lawyer's letter. It was a handwritten card from my mother, left in my mailbox. Lillian, come for dinner on Sunday. One last time. We are going to list the house on Monday to satisfy the bank. We want to say goodbye to the home together. Please, no fighting. Just family. It was a masterstroke of manipulation. It played on nostalgia. It played on the finality of losing the childhood home. It was designed to make me feel like the executioner coming to watch the head roll. I stood in my kitchen, holding the card. I smelled the faint scent of my mother's perfume on the paper. A part of me, the little girl part, wanted to go, wanted to hug them and say I was sorry and fix it all with my new bonus. But then I looked at the evidence folder on my counter. I looked at the text from Chloe. She called you the golden goose. They didn't want to say goodbye to the house. They wanted one last chance to crack me. They wanted to get me in that room, surrounded by memories, and guilt-trip me into stopping the sale. They wanted to pull me back into the role of the savior. I walked to the trash can and dropped the card inside. No, I said aloud. I pulled out my phone and texted my mother. I will not be attending. You can mail me any of my childhood belongings you wish to save. Good luck with the sale. I sent it before I could regret it. 2 hours later, Marcus Thorne called. It was late for him to be calling, nearly 8 o'clock on a Friday night. Lillian, his voice was grave. I just got off the phone with the fraud department at Liberty Capital. They have finished their preliminary review of the affidavit and the supporting documents we sent. And? I asked, my heart hammering. Is the debt off my name? Yes, Thorne said. They have agreed that the loan was fraudulent. You are in the clear. The $45,000 is no longer your liability. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 10 years. Thank God. It is over. Not exactly, Thorne said. Lillian, there is something you need to know. When Liberty Capital realized the extent of the forgery, specifically that they used a fake notary stamp on the loan application, which we missed initially, they didn't just classify this as internal fraud. What do you mean? They are a federally insured lender, Thorne said. Using a fake notary seal to defraud a federal lender triggers an automatic referral to the FBI. The bank isn't just suing your parents for the money. Lillian, they have turned the file over to the federal authorities. I gripped the edge of the counter. The FBI? This isn't a civil dispute anymore, Thorne said, his voice dropping. The bank is out for blood. They are going to prosecute. And because Brielle is listed as the beneficiary of the funds in the transfer logs, she is the primary target. I stood in the silence of my apartment. I had wanted them to stop. I had wanted them to pay. But I hadn't realized that when you pull a thread this hard, the whole sweater doesn't just unravel. It strangles the person wearing it. What happens now? I asked. Now? Thorne said. Now you stay away, because the storm that is about to hit that house is going to be Category 5. The official letter from Liberty Capital Solutions arrived 2 weeks later. It was a single page, printed on heavy, cream-colored bond paper, and it was the most beautiful thing I had ever read. in stark, uncompromising legal language. It stated that the investigation had concluded. The signature on the promissory note had been determined to be a forgery. The liability for the $45,000 loan had been permanently removed from my credit profile. My score, which had dipped during the inquiry, snapped back to a pristine 810, but the letter contained a second paragraph, one that signaled the end of my family as I knew it. It confirmed that the file, including the evidence of the fraudulent notary seal and the wire transfer logs, had been forwarded to the Federal Bureau of Investigation for potential criminal prosecution. I didn't feel triumph. I felt a profound, heavy sense of finality. The anchor was cut, but the ship I had cut loose was sinking fast. I drove to my parents' house to deliver the news personally. I didn't want to do it over the phone. I owed the little girl who grew up in that house the closure of looking them in the eye one last time. When I arrived, the atmosphere was funereal. Boxes were stacked in the hallway. The for sale sign was already planted in the front lawn. Leaning slightly to the left, a testament to the hurried desperation of the listing, my father sat in his armchair, staring at the blank television. My mother was packing china into newspaper, her movements slow and robotic. "It is done," I said, standing in the center of the living room. "The debt is off my name. The bank has cleared me." My father didn't look up. "Good. That is what you wanted, isn't it? To win." "I didn't want to win, Dad. I wanted to survive." I took a step closer. "But there is something else you need to know. The lawyer and the bank traced the funds. You told me you borrowed that money to fix the roof and pay the mortgage arrears. You told me you did it to save the family home." "We did," my mother sniffed, clutching a porcelain shepherdess. "We were drowning. Lillian." "No," I said, pulling a spreadsheet from my bag. "You weren't drowning. You were being drained." I placed the paper on the coffee table. The $45,000 didn't go to the mortgage company. It didn't go to a contractor. It went into a generic holding account, and from there, it was siphoned off in 3 days. $10,000 to a luxury consignment store in Miami, $8,000 to a crypto wallet, $12,000 to a travel agency for a content creator retreat in Bali. My father finally looked up. His eyes were bloodshot. "What are you talking about?" "I am talking about Brielle," I said. "She didn't just help you commit fraud to save the house. She scammed you. She convinced you to steal my identity. And then she stole the proceeds from you. The roof was never going to get fixed." The silence that followed was louder than any scream. My father looked at the spreadsheet, his hands shaking as he traced the lines of the transactions. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The daughter he had protected, the one he had sacrificed me for, had played him for a fool. "She said," his voice cracked, "she said she was handling the payments. She handled them." "All right," I said. "Right into her own pocket." That was the moment the family myth finally died. It wasn't the police report that broke them. It was the undeniable math. They had destroyed their relationship with their capable daughter to fund the delusions of their parasitic one. The fallout was swift and brutal. To avoid a lengthy federal prison sentence, my father had to liquidate everything. The house was sold at a distress price to an investor who paid cash. The proceeds went entirely to restitution and legal fees. They were left with nothing. No asset, no legacy, no home. They moved into a cramped 2-bedroom rental on the outskirts of town, a place with thin walls and no dining room for Sunday dinners. Brielle took the hardest hit. When the FBI agents knocked on the door of her apartment to discuss the wire fraud and the fake notary stamp, her influencer facade crumbled instantly. She called me that night, her voice unrecognizable. She wasn't the arrogant girl who mocked my single status. She was a terrified child. "Lillian, please," she sobbed into the phone. "They are talking about jail time. They said I could do 18 months. I am scared. I don't know what to do." I sat on my balcony, looking out at the city lights. I took a sip of tea. "I know you are scared. Brielle, help me," she begged. "Talk to them. Tell them it was a mistake. You have money now. You can hire a better lawyer for me." "I can't do that," I said gently. "I am the victim. Brielle, I can't pay for the defense of the person who robbed me." "But I am your sister." "And that is why I am giving you the only advice that matters," I said. "Stop lying, stop performing, go into that courtroom, plead guilty, and take the deal. You will know what to do when you finally start taking responsibility for your own life. It is the only way you will ever grow up." I hung up. I didn't block her this time. I didn't need to. The boundary was no longer digital. It was structural. The final dinner happened a week later, on the night they handed over the keys to the house. It wasn't really a dinner. We ordered pizza and ate it on paper plates in the empty living room. The echo in the room was haunting. The laughter that had mocked me months ago was gone, replaced by the heavy breathing of three people who were facing a very different future. My mother looked at me. She looked aged, defeated. "We just wanted you to be part of the family. Lillian, we wanted everyone to be successful. I am successful." "Mom," I said, wiping my mouth. "I just define success differently now. Success isn't about carrying everyone else on your back. It is about standing on your own 2 feet." I stood up and brushed the crumbs from my lap. I looked at the three of them sitting on the floor. My father, broken by his own hubris. My mother, lost without her denial. And Brielle, awaiting her sentencing. "I am not doing this out of hate," I said, my voice echoing off the bare walls. "I am walking away because I love myself enough to stop being your victim. I will help you find resources. I will help you navigate the paperwork for the move, but I will never, ever give you a cent again. The bank is closed, permanently." I walked out of that house for the last time. I didn't look back at the peeling paint or the overgrown azaleas. I got into my car and drove toward the highway, toward my apartment, toward my life. 6 months later, I sat in the closing attorney's office. But this time, the pen was in my hand, and the signature was mine. I was buying a townhouse in Dilworth. It had a garden. It had a guest room that I would turn into a library. It was mine. Every brick, every beam, every blade of grass was paid for with money I had earned and protected. I had been promoted to vice president of risk management. I had a circle of friends who liked me for my wit, not my wallet. I had started dating a man named David, a teacher who insisted on splitting the bill on every date. I didn't need to prove to anyone that I was worthy. I didn't need a husband or children to validate my existence. I had found something far more valuable than external approval. I had found my spine. My family still tells stories about me, I'm sure. They probably tell people I am the cold-hearted daughter who abandoned them in their time of need. Let them talk. I have the truth, and I have my peace. They used to laugh at me at that dining table. They used to think I was the weak one because I was quiet, because I was single, because I was dutiful. They laughed because I didn't have a husband or kids, but they forgot the most important lesson of all. The thing that made me dangerous was never a man standing beside me. It was the moment I stopped being their wallet. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today, so please drop your location in the comments below, and let's chat about what you would have done in my shoes. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more like it, please subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that like button to help share this story with more people.